Welcome to day 3 of Holy Week. This is my second favorite day of the week. My first favorite is yet to come, but this is an incredible day, a day that often gets overlooked. So what happens on this day? Well, let's look back real quick and see how we got here. Palm Sunday happened. Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. Crowds were waving palm branches as he came in. He then goes into the temple and looks around and checks things out, and then leaves and goes to Bethany, which is about 2 miles away. He stays there in Bethany and then comes back on Monday, and he goes back into the temple and he flips the tables and he cleanses the temple and says, "This is my Father's house." And he makes the statement and makes the claim that he is the Son of God by coming in going, "This can't be this way. This is meant to be a house of prayer." He then goes back to Bethany and comes in on Tuesday, day 3, and goes to the temple that he's just cleansed, and he teaches a lot. Jesus teaches a lot on this day. In fact, he probably spent the whole day in the temple. Crowds gathered around him. They wanted to hear what it was that he had to say, and we have record of much of what he said. And then the Pharisees came and the Sadducees came and they asked him questions. They asked him about the resurrection. What will the resurrection be like? They asked him about the greatest law. What's the greatest law? They were trying to trap him. They were trying to trick him because they didn't want him to be there in the temple teaching. They got upset because the answers that he gave, they had no response for. And so the plan starts to kill him, to crucify him. And yet he stays, and many come, and many hear what he has to say. And so as he's there all day long, his disciples are with him, and as they come to the end of the day, they leave, and they head out of Jerusalem back to Bethany. And that's where the story gets really good. It's just Jesus and his disciples. The disciples pull him outside of Jerusalem to the side, and they say, "Look at all of this. Isn't it fantastic?" And Jesus makes a proclamation that there will be none of this standing in a short period of time. And the disciples are in awe. Which brings us to one of my favorite chapters in all the Bible, Matthew 24. Because Jesus speaks about what's to come, and he teaches about the end of the world. The disciples ask him, "When will this moment come?" And he gives them an understanding of what it will look like when that happens. As we sit here today, I've had a number of people ask, are we experiencing the end of the world? See, the disciples thought that they were, or they were going to in that time. Jesus spoke very clearly about it, and for 2,000 years, if you've been a part of Christianity, you've probably wondered, when will the world come to an end? I've read many articles about that this week. People asking and trying to figure out and wondering, is this pandemic the end of the world? Will the world come to an end? Did Jesus teach about that during Holy Week? Well, let's read Matthew 24 together and see what it is that he has to say. Matthew chapter 24, verse 1. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to its buildings. "Do you see all these things?" he asked. "Truly I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." As Jesus was then sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus had left the temple. He had left Jerusalem. The Mount of Olives was on its way back to Bethany. He was heading as they went back to Bethany. He's sitting on the Mount of Olives, and they came and they asked this. And he answers, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you'll be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you'll be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached to the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination of desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down and take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it, for false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is out in the wilderness, do not go out there. Here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, that you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Is this the end of the world? Will the world come to an end? Well, the answer is yes, it will. There is nothing that has ever been created that has lasted for all eternity. There is nothing that is infinite. This world that we are on right now is finite. There is an end date to it. Will the world come to an end? Yes. The real question is there a God that controls all the days that we've been given on this earth? And I believe the answer to that question is yes. So are we in the end of the world? I don't know. In fact, this chapter continues to go on saying that nobody knows the time or the hour when that will happen. So what's the culmination of this story? Is it for us to look at these times and go, this is the end of the world, and make that proclamation? I don't think so. Because the end of the story is Jesus saying, will you be ready when it happens? Are you ready? Not physically, not that we stock up and store all sorts of food and get prepared for something really destructive and awful to take place, even though that's possible, it may. We need to be prepared. We need to have the right things. We need to care for our families. We need to do that type of stuff. But more importantly, he says, are you ready spiritually? Are you ready when that day comes, when I return again to join me? And that's a major question in Holy Week. As we go into this week, as we're in the middle of it, as we read the story, the question that's been there every time we come into this week is, are you ready? We're journeying with Jesus to a point. And that point is Good Friday and Easter, and there's a reason it happened, so he could give us eternity. So that because of him and the price that he paid on the cross and the resurrection from the dead, that you and I can have eternal life. So the times that we're in, instead of them being scary, should be exciting because there's hope. See, for many years, I heard the end of the world spoken of as doom and gloom. Oh! And yet what I want to tell you is the end of the world brings hope because the return of the Messiah is coming, and that's exciting. And as Christians, we have that hope through times like this. Whether it is the end or not, I don't know. We know that Jesus will return, and this isn't the end. If you don't know that, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to share that hope with you because it changes your perspective of this pandemic. Instead of being miserable and sad, yes, there is grieving, we are losing, things will not be normal. Instead of being caught up in the turmoil of this time, we can focus our eyes on the hope because Jesus is with us. Are you ready? This was a great day. I love this day. Read through Matthew 24 on your own. Read the rest of it. See what Jesus has to say, and then wrestle through it. But then have hope and know that someday he's coming back, and every eye will see him, and it will be a glorious day. Well, thank you for joining me during this Holy Week. Looking forward to tomorrow, Wednesday. See you then.